Good morning, everyone. Pastor George here for our episode of A New Thing. I am excited to be here, and I actually have, I don't know, if a feel good story or something that prompted today's lesson. We're going to be talking about technology um, because I think it's just an important thing to talk about given the world that we live in and kind of how we should feel about it, and especially because. Um, I don't have any knowledge of this type of stuff, but of course, in recent years, some pretty cool stuff has come out, and it's like, how should we think about it? You know, you have the AI thing going on, and certainly, while some of that is a fad, of course, it has changed our society already, and we have new medical technologies, and I've talked about the guy on here several times who's like he's like trying to live forever or whatever, right? And of course, like some of this stuff is just weird pieces that our media likes to get a hold of and talk about. But I actually did find a feel good story today that I want to discuss. Um, and This is a story about Cyberlink. So, for those of you who don't know, Cyberlink is one of the companies that Elon Musk owns. And now I'm just going to be kind of upfront about this. I'm not a big fan of Elon Musk, and it has nothing to do with politics. I haven't liked him before he even got into politics. Back when he was, talking about how we need to make drills to connect cities in California, and he called that one British diver who like tried to save those Thai kids in that cave. He called him, a child lover. I guess is the YouTube algorithm correct way to say it, but you get what I'm saying. So always kind of see him as like one of those just Silicon Valley guys. So it has nothing to do with modern politics. It just has everything to do with like overselling and underperforming, which is consistent with Silicon Valley values, right? So so I preface by saying that, but this is, I think, a really good story that Christianity Today did, where they interviewed the recipient of Neuralink. So Neuralink is a company that develops chips for the brain that helps to do science things that, of course, I cannot understand, computational things that I cannot understand, above my pay grade. But they're able to help you use a screen, even though you are a quadriplegic, who this guy was. So, and I remember when this happened, and I was like, oh, I hope God doesn't, that this doesn't cause this person to just have their brain fried or whatever, right? Because I was, this is one of those scary technologies. When you start messing with the human brain, you got to be careful, right? But anyway, so they have this interview with this guy, who I had no idea that he was a Christian, and he talks a lot about his own life, his life before his accident, his life after it, and kind of how he views technology now. I'm going to link this in the description. I'm not going to read it to you guys. I think it's worth reading. So if you're interested, check it out. I think it complicates things, because I think so often, we want maybe to see all technology as a good thing or all technology is a bad thing. You have like futurists who are like, oh yes, we just need to escape flesh, escape the human body. We need to be like completely plugged into the AI, and then life will be better. And then of course you have people who are a lot less enthused about that. And I love the term for this, a Luddite. This doesn't mean that you're just skeptical, right? This is like that you are actively against technological innovation. I mean, you could see even the Unabomber kind of falling into this category, right? For anyone who remembers him and what he was all about. But Luddites were these people in England kind of during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution who would go around smashing machines that automated work because they didn't want to lose their jobs, right? So kind of anyone who is seen as being backwards thinking or anti-technology is a Luddite. But what I want to talk about today is, what does the Bible have to say about technology? And it's kind of an interesting story. Of course, technology as we know it today is foreign to the writers of the Bible and the lives of the people that we read about in Scripture a lot of the time. But they have their own sort of technology and life to living in. And so I think that it's important to to take a look at that. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to first look at Genesis 2, because there's a story kind of the Bible tells, which is an interesting one that isn't talked about much. So this is the story of the Garden of Eden. I'm sure many of you are aware of that. In verse 8, it says, "The Lord planted a garden in Eden in the east, where he put the man whom he had formed." Now, garden, there's like debate about how to translate that word. Obviously, when we think of a garden, we think of a little enclosure behind your house where you grow a few plants, right? That's not the garden that this has in mind. I think we can agree with all of this, right? A garden in this sense is very much kind of drawing on the idea of an enclosure, an enclosed space where lots of different things are grown, like a botanical garden might be the closest idea to kind of what this is getting at. Or the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. If you've ever seen a picture of those, you can kind of look at them. It's not so much a garden in the sense of a place where you grow food in the back of your house, but very much a expansive view of kind of what this is. And when you see pictures of this, right, if you look up pictures of Adam and Eve, which I'm sure you see many, it's a paradise, right? That's how it's described and understood. And so paradise starts in nature, which is interesting to think about. And there's been many scholars who have looked at the book of Genesis and have argued that Genesis presents an anti-technological view, that there is an anti-view of progress in Genesis, and that it's actually bad that human beings kind of move in a certain direction. That's not what I believe, but like just as an example, that this isn't a completely wrong-headed thing to think. We could look at Genesis 4, and we have Cain and Abel, right? But after that, we got a lot of these different things, right? So we have different people born of Cain. So Cain is again not a great figure in the Bible, right? He's the first murderer, and his sons kind of do these things where it's beginning to technology is beginning to take shape, right? Or human life is beginning to change. So one of his sons is the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. So you have animal domestication happening. He has another son named Jubal, and he's the father of those who play the lyre and the pipes. You have music being developed. And then you also have Zillah, who has Tubal Cain, and he was the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. And so you begin to have technology in the kind of the way we would understand it, right? Metallurgy happening here. And of course, you also have some of these guys have like Lamech, right? Lamech has 2 wives, and this is not a good thing. Like, so I think the point here is that these aren't necessarily positive things that are going on here. And Enoch is also Cain is the first one to build a city as well. So you have kind of this technological advancement going on that isn't necessarily positively received in the Bible. And so I think what I'm going to do is this is going to be one of my examples, but I'm showing you how the Bible has negative view of some technological things, or that technological comes out of negative, at least origins, is in the case of Genesis 4, but also has positive ones. So we're going to look at another negative one, and this is Genesis 6, which is a story that I'm sure you're very well aware of. I'm sorry, not Genesis 6. Genesis 11. I've been like doing a lot of work in Noah recently, which is why I automatically went there. Genesis 11 is the Tower of Babel. Now, again, a story you're probably familiar with, right? They build humanity gets together and builds a tower and a city, right? So in verse 4, it says, "Then they said," I guess we'll start with verse 3, right? It said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth." And so, of course, we know what happens, right? God confuses their language. They're unable to do it, and then it's gone. But the idea here is they're building a city and a tower, technological advancements. At this time, of course, we don't see that as being a big deal. But notice like this idea of like the city and this idea of technology being used kind of negative in some of these Genesis stories, right? Not very positive. At least I wouldn't call it positive. Maybe you would, but I don't think I necessarily would. So anyway, not a positive look for technology at this point. Now that begins to change over time, or technology begins to be redeemed. And so I want to look at Exodus 31, and maybe if you've been reading through the Bible with me, you know what this part is. This is not the most exciting part of of Genesis, right? Or of the Torah and Exodus. This is when God is describing the tabernacle and all these other types of things, right? And so this is an interesting part where it talks about these two guys that are doing something. So this is Exodus 31. It says, "The Lord said to Moses, 'See, I have called by my name Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge in all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting and in carving wood, to work in every craft. And behold, I have appointed him Oholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and I have given to all able men ability, that they make all that I have commanded you: the tent of meeting, and the ark of the testimony, and the mercy seat that is on it, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table and its utensils, and the pure lampstand with all its utensils, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the basin and its stand, and the finely worked garments, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons for their service as priests, and the anointing oil and the fragrant incense for the holy place, according to all that I have commanded you, they shall do." So interesting here, because God personally calls out two guys that are going to make the things for the tabernacle, and he tells them right there, right in verse 3, when he's speaking about Bezalel, he's saying he's filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence to work in gold and silver and bronze. And these are things, cutting of stone and wood, these are things that earlier in Genesis are kind of if you don't want to say negative, at least ambiguous about how good they are, right? Because they're associated kind of with Cain and building cities, and maybe those things are very positive, right? And so here, God is saying, actually, I filled them with the ability to do these things, and it's a positive thing, right? And they're going to use that ability to make something really beautiful and nice for me as I dwell amongst the people. So important to remember that, right? I think that this is a positive viewpoint. Now, when you're reading Exodus, you might miss that because you're probably getting bowled over by all this emphasis on how is the tabernacle supposed to look, but there is stuff in there that hints that there's a greater kind of redemption arc that's going on here. Next thing I want to look at is 1 Kings. We're going to be 1 Kings 7. So again, very similar passage. The temple is kind of the fulfillment of the tabernacle. It's a permanent location. It's not a tent that's moving around anymore. So most famously, it is built by Solomon, the son of King David. And again, there's a special person that's kind of called out here. And this is talked about, I would think, positively in the Bible. And this is a really interesting character. It says, "And King Solomon sent and brought Hiram from Tyre." So Tyre, should be noted, not part of the kingdom. Tyre is a Phoenician city, kind of, I think, farther north than what we would say is modern-day Lebanon or Syria. I could be mistaken on the exact geographic location. Let me find that now. That's the great thing about live shows, right? Unfortunately, I don't have a producer. Yes, Tyre in Lebanon. All right, so not a part of the kingdom and not a part of modern-day Israel for certain. So this is a pagan city, and this is a guy that's brought in from there. Now, he's the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in bronze. So his dad is not a. I mean, maybe there's debate about this, but just looking at the text at the surface, it seems like his dad is not an Israelite, right? His mom is, but his dad isn't. He's brought in um, through connection to work on the temple, which is interesting. And it says he was full of wisdom, understanding, and skill for making any work in bronze. He came to King Solomon and did all his work, and it talks about the things that he made, right? And it's very beautiful. And so he's a very talented metal worker and bronzesmith, depending on kind of what old-fashioned word you want to use there. And I think this is, again, the use of technology. And this is even in a more kind of ambiguous stance in its origin, right? Because at least the two guys mentioned in Exodus are coming out of the tribes of Israel. This guy is Israelite on his mother's side, but he's not living among them, right? It's not like he's from this area. He's brought from a foreign place, and maybe, you know, on the surface you could see people being like, oh, why are we bringing, you know, this guy in to do this sort of thing? But it seems like he's described as having very very wise and you know, being blessed by God in the same way to do this work in bronze. And again, working in bronze, not always positive in the Bible, right? You have the golden calf kind of idea going on there, the forging of bronze idols that happens. But this is that being used, that use of bronze is being used positively here for the worship of God through the building of the temple. And of course, the takeaway from this is not necessary. It's not easy, right? It's very bland, I'm sorry to say, but the idea here is that technology is a good or an evil, depending on who's using it and what its purpose for use is, right? So can AI be abused? Of course. Can it be good? Of course it can, right? Now, I want to point something else, though, about this. And this is where some of my friends, especially my friends who love kind of camping and hate the city and all sorts of things, are not going to be very pleased with heaven. Because one of the things, the way heaven is described is not as a garden, which is very interesting, right? You know, a lot of people will be like, oh, heaven is like a return to Eden, a return to paradise, something like that. But that's not how heaven is described in the book of Revelation, right? The book of Revelation describes heaven like this. It says, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband, right? And so city very much means a place where a lot of people live together, right? So we're going to pull up a word. I'm going to guess it's polis. Yes, it is. It's polis, right? It's the Greek word where we get words like metropolitan. That politan part of metropolitan is this Greek word for polis, right? So this is very much an important understanding of kind of what the future is going to look like. It's going to be people dwelling together in a heavenly city. Now, of course, we could debate about how literally to take some of this description presented in Revelation and things like that. But the idea here is it's not a garden. Not that it's going to be devoid of any beautiful greenery or whatever. I don't think that Revelation says that either, right? There is greenery there. But it's not Eden. It's something, it's a perfected place, right? It's even better than kind of how it is before. And very interesting to kind of think about that within the city, especially the way cities have a kind of a negative reputation at the beginning, right? God redeems all of this and places himself in the midst the people, and there's no place you could get more people than in the city, right? So that's an interesting thing to take away as well when it comes to how we view technology. But I want the upshot to be this of what we're doing here, right? And again, not anything crazy here, right? But in Psalm 20, this is a Psalm of David, and they're praising God, right? Now, one of the things that they say in here is Psalm 20, verse 7. It says, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. And I think when it comes to technology, this is the thing that is really important to remember here, because technology, anytime it's brought out, especially something kind of new or amazing, it people go all out on it, right? This happened with AI, right? I think now 2 years later, we're starting to realize its limits in some areas, and that initial burst of ability has kind of slowed down quite a bit, um, and things like that, right? But I remember when it was coming out, people were saying, in 2 years we won't have to do any work anymore, things like that, right? There's this idea that technology today, AI, this implant, medical things, right? Those are the things that are our chariots and our horses, right? Chariots and horses here represent kind of the pinnacle of military technology at the time that this psalm was written. And so people are saying, oh, we trust in these things for our protection. Just like today, we might trust in AI or things for our protection, or our longevity or our happiness. But the Bible is saying, we don't do that, right? We trust in the name of the Lord, because God is the only consistent thing across time periods. So Christians, right, we can't really have a positive or a wholly positive or a wholly negative view of technology, because we understand sin and we understand the propensity of humans to use things for bad, but we also know that humans can use things for good, and God can redeem things that do seem bad, and turn them towards his purpose. So yeah, that article really got me thinking about something that I was pretty skeptical of, and seeing the positivity part of it, and seeing that someone is actively linking it to God's redemptive work in the world. It was a pretty powerful thing, and unfortunately, probably not something that's much known outside of this Christianity Today article. So that's why I wanted to share it, and also equip ourselves for thinking about technology in a little bit of a deeper way. So I hope that was interesting to you, and I am excited to talk to you guys on Sunday about the book of Numbers. So I hope to see you guys there, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Peace out.